So today's topic might rock the boat a little bit. and and that's good. It's good to have these moments when you hear something that kind of pierces your heart a little bit and makes you recognize, ooh, okay, yeah, I need to change that, or I need to fix that, or I need to do something different. Um if I would have heard this podcast that I'm about to record, if I would have heard it 5 years ago, I would have been mad. I would have been mad to hear this. But now that I've gone through what I've gone through and I can tell the story, I'm recognizing how important it is to let go of control. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created, and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it is not, you are in the right place. I pray that this blesses you, so let's get to it. I think when we are charting our cycle, there's a temptation to make it almost like our control, especially if we're going through any reproductive health issues and we're trying to figure out different medications or diets or whatever to get healthy. We want it to happen fast, right? Like we don't want it to be a slow journey. We don't want it to be years and years of figuring things out and trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. We don't want it to take a long time. But sometimes it does, because charting your cycle and understanding the root cause of whatever is going on with your body, that in and of itself is good medicine, but it's not quick medicine, right? Quick medicine would be, okay, let's get you on the pill to quote unquote regulate your cycles, but it's not fixing anything. It's not doing anything other than delaying the issue and possibly making the issue actually worse. So when we are charting our cycle, it is a journey. It is not something that's just a quick fix, right? And I think in our culture, we just have this, a delayed gratification is really hard for us. But that's what this whole journey is, right? It is a journey of patience and learning what is in our control and what is not. So basically what I'm getting at is that when you are charting your cycle, or at least for me, there was a big temptation to make my chart like my control over my fertility. And I actually want to invite you guys in on a little story of just how this happened in my life and how really God helped me understand that my fertility is not in my control. Now I can do things to help my fertility. I can see the right doctors, I can eat the right foods, and I can take the right medicines and whatever that is, but ultimately it is not in my control. And so to take a step back really quick, when my husband and I were engaged, well, okay, back up even more actually. Before we were even engaged, I was learning to become an NFP instructor. If you've heard anything about my story or have listened to any other of my podcasts, you'll know that I actually started charting my cycle as a single woman because I was having reproductive issues. And ultimately they found I had PCOS. And I kind of went through a long journey of finding healing and finding ways to get my body and my cycle regular and healthy. And so I started that journey as a single woman. But then when my husband and I were dating and engaged, in the church that we got married in, we got married in the Catholic church. And in our area, there is like a marriage preparation classes that we go through. And one of them is a full natural family planning class, which I was so grateful for. Because even though I had learned it, my husband was totally on board with using it, but he didn't know like the practicals of how to use it. And so we took the class together, and that was really, really helpful for us. And it just really brought us together in our marital fertility, right? And so we also, when we got married, we wanted to have kids right away. And knowing that I had, that the issues with PCOS in the past, we didn't know if that was going to be possible right away. But I just really felt determined and passion for wanting to have kids right away. So we got married, and I was charting my cycle to a T. I mean, perfectly. And again, remember, with charting your cycle and natural family planning, fertility awareness, whatever you want to call it, it is as effective as you make it, right? So if you are doing 100% observations, checking for mucus every time you go to the bathroom, charting it every day correctly, like, it's going to be effective. And that's what we were doing. But we weren't using it to avoid pregnancy. We were using it to achieve pregnancy. And with having PCOS, my cycles were pretty long. I have very long cycles. And so I was charting to a T. And also, by the way, I am very much a control freak. I really like to have control around me, of things around me, and sometimes of people around me. And I'm working with God on that one. But I really like control. And I can also tend towards perfectionism as well, which isn't always great. So my chart became my control. And one thing that we learned, or my husband and I learned, when we were taking the NFP class in our marriage prep classes when we were engaged, was we learned that in order for our fertility to truly be ours and not just mine, we learned that Sean, my husband, should take over the charting, which, in this, the way that this looks is basically I'm doing the checks all day, right? Because you're looking at the woman's fertility. Men are always fertile. So you're looking at when women are only fertile for about a week of their cycle. So you're observing the woman's biomarkers or signs of her body to determine your joint fertility as a couple, right? And so, I'm doing a lot of the work with checking for mucus and all, just all that stuff. And so a way to get the husband involved and for it to be truly your joint fertility is for him to take over the charting. And so that's what we were doing throughout our engagement. Was Sean had the charts and I was checking every day, and then we would literally have just like a 30-second conversation at the end of the day, just to say like, hey, this is what I saw. He writes it down, bam, done. Sometimes it turned into a longer conversation, which is good. But really the benefit of charting together like that is because when you're married, your fertility is not your own. It is a joint marital fertility, right? And so the best way to get the husband involved is to have him chart. Okay. So all of that to say that when we got married, we both wanted to have children right away. And so the chart became my control. And very slowly, somehow, the chart went from my husband's bedside table and it slid its way over to mine. And very slowly, I just started taking over control of the chart because it was my control. Like, I felt like it was my steering wheel. It was the only thing that I had that I could, it really isn't, you can't control it either. I mean, you can't control what you're seeing throughout the day, but it felt like it was my control. And we didn't get pregnant right away like I thought we would, or that I hoped we would. And so it just became this way for me to try to control the situation. And the situation wasn't mine to be in control of, right? Like, children are a gift, they're not a privilege. And so as difficult as that is, and as difficult as that was for me, there was a lot of stress also that built up in not getting pregnant right away. And I I just really struggled with that. And there were times where I literally threw like a 2-year-old toddler tantrum on the ground of my kitchen whenever I would get my period again. Like it was a hard it was a hard time of expecting something and then not getting that. And there was also a bit of, or a lot of bit of immaturity there too, in just, just expecting something to happen and then it not happening. Um, but, to have grace with myself too, it was also a lot of heartbreak of recognizing that I wasn't getting pregnant right away. And that wasn't the plan for us. And so but all of this to say really that in a situation where you feel like you have no control, you try to grasp onto something that gives you a feeling of control. And so for me, that grasping onto control was taking over my chart. And so Sean and I stopped talking about it. And it wasn't even like an intentional, deliberate thing. It was just over time, we got out of the habit of talking about it. It just became something that I wanted so badly. And I really just wanted control over the situation. I'm going to say the word control about 100 times in this podcast because that's what it was. I just wanted control. And so about 7 months, 6 or 7 months into our marriage, I was under so much stress and so much just anxiety about, we haven't gotten pregnant yet. Oh no, what's going to happen? And and I remember I had an appointment with my OBGYN and my husband came with, and we sat there, and my OBGYN, I think he just saw the stress level I was under, and he just saw that the chart was in my control, or I was trying to make the chart in my control. And so he looked at me and he was like, Haley, I am going to challenge you to stop charting for 1 month. And I was like, what? It was like, why would you tell me to stop charting? This is the way that I'm monitoring my health. Like, how in the world, why, as you as a doctor, why in the world would you ever tell me to stop charting? It was just startling to me that he would ask me to stop charting, because this is the way that I'm managing my health, like, and seeing what medications work and what don't. And, but he just asked me, can you just stop charting for 1 month and then get back to it, but just take a break. And that, looking back, was a very wise thing that he asked of me, because he just saw how much stress that it was causing me. And so I remember the car ride home, and I remember just being so just angry that he would ask me to stop charting. And this is a very like non-reasonable response, you guys. Like this really shows how much I was hanging on to this chart for control, because for me, the idea of not charting anymore was letting go of control of having a baby, getting pregnant. And that was really hard for me to be able to just let go of control over that. And it wasn't even that I had control over it, but that was just my idea of wanting control was just taking over the chart. And so I was actually kind of surprised to hear that my husband even was very on board with this, because he saw how stressed I was with it. He saw the toddler tantrums that were happening. I mean, he was seeing all of this too. And so on the car ride home, he said, okay, if you don't want to do a month, let's just stop charting for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, fine. And you guys, in that 2 weeks that I stopped charting is when we conceived my first son. Isn't that just insane? I mean, so looking back on it now, I can see a physical side of things, but then I can also see a spiritual side of things. The physical side of things is that I worked myself up so much to the point where my stress level was so high that I was barely even ovulating, because stress can affect your cycle, even up to the point of delaying ovulation for a long time. And even if you are ovulating while you're stressed, sometimes it's a poor ovulation, or sometimes it's, there's some sort of defect with the ovulation. And so stress can have a major effect on our fertility as women. And so I think on a physical side, that stress of wanting to conceive so badly was actually getting in the way of me conceiving. Isn't that crazy? So on a physical side, that is totally what I see. Now, on a spiritual side of things, I do think that this was God just asking me to let go of control. Because when we are hanging on so tight to our own plans, or our own desires, or our own things that we want to go in the way that we want it to go, right? We can forget who truly is in charge. We can forget who truly has your best interest. And it's not to say that our desires are not good. They are good. Well, hopefully our desires are good, right? My desire for a child was good, but my desire for control over when that child came into the world was not good, because I was not leaning on the Lord. I just wanted my own plan, and I wanted it to happen now. And so when I made that even just very small intentional decision to stop charting for 2 weeks, you guys, just 2 weeks, that act of just letting go gave God the path to gifting me and my husband our first child. So it's when we let go of control of our fertility, or really of anything that's going on in your life, sometimes we just need to let go of control. So I want to leave you guys with 3 practical tips on, if this sounds anything like you are really trying to take control of your fertility, you've been going through a reproductive health journey for a long time, and you still have no answers, and you're still just in this point of suffering, really, and trying to understand what is going on, and your chart has become your control. Here's a few things that I want you to remember, these 3 practical tips. So the first thing, this is more so for my engaged and married listeners, but give your husband your chart. Holy cow. If that is the only thing that you do, give your husband or your fiance your chart. This in and of itself, allows you to recognize that your fertility is your joint fertility, right? So it allows your husband to come into that process, and it just allows him to be in the know of what is going on when you are fertile, when you are infertile. It's good for you to be able to see how different medications, different diets, whatever, are working to change your fertility, to make it healthier. But it's also really important for your husband to see that too. And also, just on this aspect of control, right? Making sure that somebody else is seeing your chart, so that it's not just in your grasp and it's not just in your hands, but allowing, your husband to write on it, or allowing and if you're not married, if you have that if you have a good relationship with your mom, to give her the chart. Or if you have a best friend that, if you're single and you have a best friend that you think would want to start charting too, you guys should learn it together and then help each other chart. And just making sure that somebody else can see your chart, if it's your husband or fiance, that he is actually doing the writing. He's the one that's writing on the chart, writing your descriptions down. That is so important. That is like the first step. If I were to go back and change anything about my story of, being able to finally conceive our first son, it would be to allow my husband to have that chart back, to never have taken it away in the first place. Now, the second practical tip is, I want to give you permission to take a break with a small caveat. So I was actually just working with a client the other day who was going through a similar situation that I was, in that there was just a lot of stress going around just in charting. It was causing her a lot of stress, and I gave her homework to actually take a break from charting for 1 week. Now, for clients that are actively trying to figure out what medications to be on, if they're having a lesser quality of life, that like if they're having extreme pain or they're having like really bad PMS symptoms or whatever it is, right? It's probably not prudent to just stop charting for indefinitely, because we want to see, as I'm not a healthcare professional, but I work with a lot of healthcare professionals who want to be able to see how those different medications are changing and affecting the cycle. So I would never tell somebody who's charting, especially for the sake of fertility health, to just indefinitely stop charting. But I did tell this specific client, I want you to just stop charting for 1 week, because even just 1 week can be enough to kind of reset your brain. And I told her, I'm like, take a bath every night, have a really nice cup of coffee, just like a week of self-care to just kind of reset yourself. And then once you are ready, come back to the chart and start again. And so this second tip is, I want to give you permission to let go of the chart. If this is something that you are really struggling with control over your charting, or the charting itself is just causing so much stress, you can let it go. You can let it go for 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever you need, you can let it go. Permission to let it go. Now, again, I don't recommend indefinitely letting it go. I recommend having a point on the calendar of when you are going to start it back up. Especially too, I mean, if you're using the charting or natural family planning to avoid pregnancy, maybe the best time to let go of the chart is during your luteal phase, or during that post-ovulation phase, when you know that you're completely infertile for the remainder of that cycle after ovulation, so that you would have intercourse being available if you were trying to avoid pregnancy. So that's just more of a practical thing of when to let go of the charting. But so depending on your situation, but anyways, permission to let go of the charting for a temporary time to kind of reset and get back into the swing of things. Now, the third tip, and it really is just more of a reminder, that the chart is just data. Your chart is just data. It is a tool. It is not a steering wheel. Okay. Your chart is data. When I am working with clients, especially the ones that are seeing a doctor alongside learning how to chart, their chart is data. My job is to get them confident in charting correctly and building that habit of charting their cycle, so that they can collect data about their body to be able to present to the doctor that is ultimately going to help heal them, right? So your chart is just data. It is not your control. It is not a steering wheel. It is data. It is a tool, right? Now, the effect of using this tool, of using this data, right? We don't just take data for nothing. We take data to be able to make changes or to fix something, or to, we don't just take data for nothing. And so by learning this data about your body, we can then make changes. Either it's a diet change, medication, possibly even surgery, right? But there are different things that we can do as an effect of what the data on your chart is showing. But just remembering that your chart is not a steering wheel, it is a tool. It is data, okay? So important to remember. So again, those 3 practical tips. First one, have your husband or a loved one or a best friend take over the charting. Do not just keep it in your hands. Second is that if you are noticing that just the charting itself is causing so much stress, permission to take a break. And then third, remembering that your chart is just data. It is data. It is a tool. It is not your control, right? Ultimately, children are a gift. Children are not a privilege. And that can be a really, really hard message to hear. No matter what your situation is, that can be a really hard message to hear. But I encourage you to take that to prayer. Think about that. Think on that. Pray on that. That children are a gift, right? And a gift is received. It's not forcibly received, if that makes sense. You can't force somebody to give you a gift. But when somebody does give you a gift, you can open your arms to receive that. I want you to be confident in my prayers for you. I pray for my listeners, and whatever fertility journey that you're going through, I'm praying for you. I'm praying that you can let go of the control. And I'm praying that whatever God's will for your family is, that it be. And I'm praying that you find joy in whatever fertility circumstance that you're in, and that you can be at peace with wherever you are in that journey. It's never easy, I don't think, to let go of control over something that you want so much control over. It's never easy. But even just that small step in letting go of control, just the smallest step, God can do a lot of work with that. He can do a lot of work with that. So if you have made it to the end of this podcast, I just want to thank you so much for listening. If you are enjoying this podcast, please give a 5-star review, a written review. That would be so wonderful. That helps get this podcast into other people's ears as well. And as always, if you want to learn how to start charting, you can visit truthandfertility.com. And I am currently taking clients as this podcast is coming out. So there is a contact or a way to contact me through my website, truthandfertility.com, and we can get set up with a phone call to get you started on this charting journey. It's been great talking with you guys, and I will talk to you again next week.